All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to our webinar tonight with a very special guest, Juli Ferré Nadal. In just a moment, I'll give a brief introduction on Juli, who I know many of you already know who he is. The topic for tonight's webinar we've entitled Commercial Disruption in Football. And as you're going to see, Juli's going to talk about some of the trends, some of the effects that we've been living in the football industry, particularly after the pandemic, but not only because of that pandemic. There's many trends that we're going to analyze, and of course, Juli is an expert in this particular field. To give you a little bit of background on Juli, Juli has been working as a consultant for a number of years, and he's also had experience working in the sports industry, and particularly in the football industry, as the head of global partnerships at FC Barcelona, and then moving on as the chief commercial officer at AS Monaco. And prior to that, he also worked with FIBA, he worked with Cirque du Soleil. So he's a profile that you're going to see is very much a well-rounded executive with experience in not only the football industry, but the sports industry as a whole. So Juli, it's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be again with you guys. Thank you for the opportunity, Diego.
Excellent. So I believe you have the control over the slide. So I'll just pick up on that, and then I'll hand you over the presenter role again. Just to introduce myself briefly and who we are and what we do at SBI. My name is Diego Valdez. I'm the CEO at SBI, also known as the Sports Business Institute. We're based in Barcelona. And the way we're going to structure the webinar tonight is looking at a little bit about what we do at SBI very briefly, and then we're going to turn it over to Juli, who's going to talk about his presentation on the commercial disruption in football. And then at the end, I'm briefly going to touch upon the Master in Football Business and Management, which we run at SBI, ending with the Q&A session. So as we always like to do when we do these webinars is we like to find out where you're connecting from. So in the chat box, if you can go ahead and type where you're connecting from, whether it's the country or the city you're based now or where you're from originally, we always like to see that, because that way we know that, the sound is coming through properly, and also get a bit of an idea as to where our audience is coming from tonight. So we have somebody here from Germany, India, South Africa. Right, so welcome guys. Antonio from Mexico, Daniel from Ireland, James in Liverpool. Welcome, James. Mexico from Rodolfo, Eva from London. Wow, okay. So the list keeps growing, Juli. As you can see, we have an international audience yet again. So welcome, guys. Great to see you here tonight. Sorry, I'm just looking at the slides here. Right, so briefly on who we are and what we do at SBI. Well, we're an institute specialized in executive education for the football industry. And our aim is to help professionals grow, network, and lead. In fact, this is what we stand for at SBI, because we believe that in order to make the industry better, we need professionals that are prepared, that are the next generation of leaders, that can take the industry to the next level, and make it grow in a way where it's, as we'll talk about later on as well, sustainable, ethical, and making the sport that we all love even better than what it is now. So we've been established for 10 years. In 2012, that's when SBI began. So we've been 10 years in the market. We are based in Barcelona, Spain, although we offer courses online, which means that we basically reach all corners of the world. We have students, and our community goes, very far into all the deep corners of the world. We're at, last time we counted, at plus 83 countries of our alumni community, and we've had the pleasure of training over 3,000 students plus through our master's programs, particularly in these years. We pride ourselves because we work very hard to establish connections with clubs, federations, tournaments, agencies, as well as professional footballers. And the reason we do that is because we believe that if we make the Institute grow, if we connect it to more clubs, to more federations, to more agencies, to more stakeholders in the industry, we can then provide more opportunities for our students. So we're constantly looking, this is one of our missions, to continue to grow and expand the Institute in order for you, those students, that community that we have online, to get the most value of what we do every day at SBI. Here are a few images of what we like to call the SBI family. So obviously these are a lot of the face-to-face events that we also do at the end of our master's programs and some of the seminars that we attend and that we run throughout the year. But as I mentioned before, most of what we do is we provide blended or online learning so that we can provide top quality education for people no matter where they're based around the globe. And fortunately, in these 10 years, we've been able to get people into the positions that they aspire to. So our alumni work for these organizations here, and these are just a few of the crests and the logos, because we have many, many more students placed across a number of clubs, leagues, federations, agencies, sports law firms, sports startups, you name it. So this is just to say a little bit about what we do and how we offer it at SBI. That's an introduction as to who we are. At the end, once Juli finishes his presentation, I'll be back on and I'll talk a little bit about our master's program, because Juli, apart from being a consultant, apart from having this wealth of experience in the industry, is also an executive that gives back, that comes back to many institutes, including SBI, and he teaches and he provides master classes. So actually, Juli is one of our guest lecturers for the master. So what you're going to see tonight is a little bit of a sample as what you would expect to see in a master class on our master's program. So it's a bit of a sample, obviously with some differences, because the classes that we normally run are live. They're reduced groups, so it allows us to have more of a conversation with open microphones. Tonight we won't have that, but it gives you a taste as to how these sessions are structured, and you're going to see that they're very up to date, they're very relevant, and you're going to learn a lot. So without any further ado, Juli, once again, welcome. It's a real pleasure to have you here. I'll give you back the presenter's access, and whenever you're ready, we're very keen to hear what you have to share with us tonight.
Perfect. Thank you, Diego, for the very kind introduction, and I'm always amazed by the crowd that we get and the international crowd that we get. So it's really fantastic. Hopefully, it will be an interesting session, and hopefully there will be questions at the end, because I always count on questions. I'm not here to talk for too long. I always like, even if it's through the chat, to let the audience engage and ask their questions, right? So yeah, I struggled to find the right title here, in all honesty, because it's we've been doing this for a couple of years now, and of course, year one in 2020 was a tough year for everybody, and very tough for the industry, right? I think that I had to start this presentation with many bad news slides, about the losses from the clubs and the empty stadiums and all of this. In 2021, we were seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, but still we had a lot of restrictions, and we were always afraid it would come back. So I didn't know how to put the title. At some point, I put "Goodbye COVID," but I don't want to say that because COVID's still here around. So I just wanted to say, after the pandemic, let's say after the rough years and seasons. Now we focus, of course, on the football side. Where we are now, right? It's 2022. The pandemic, as we suffered it, it's behind us. So the purpose today is really to make a bit of an overview on where we are, how is the disruption, happening in the football world, and where we're going. Always trying to predict a little bit the trends coming up. But of course, who knows, especially these days where things can change so fast, right? But what is clear is that the post-pandemic world, in general, but of course in the subject that we apply, is that what's happening is that changes are accelerated, and I think it's a sentence that is a bit overused, but it's a fact. Things go very fast, and there's been disruption in society in sport. I think that before 2020, many things were happening. Of course, I mean, we had the social media, a lot of digitalization, many things happening, but I don't think we could imagine how fast things could happen in the years to come, right? And I love this picture because I don't have to put empty stadiums anymore. But the reality today is that, if you see it, yeah, some people, I mean, the stadiums are full. That's the good news. Some people wearing masks, some people not wearing masks, not caring, is the world we're living in today, right? So the two realities coexisting. But at least it's a very, very good news that the stadiums are full and life is back. And the focus today here is going to be a lot on the digital, right? Because I mean, there's no question that digital is at the core, at the heart of all this transformation, and digital is actually covering a lot in football. Because I remember, and not that long ago, when I was in FC Barcelona, for instance, where digital was part of communications, right? I mean, digital is how you communicate through social media, how you post your content on Facebook, Twitter, what languages you need to use, etc. Right? And that was managed by the communications department. I remember when we started to have somebody involved on digital business, right? And it could be one person, two persons. It looks like I'm talking 20 years ago, but it's not. I mean, I'm talking 6-7 years ago, so it's not that long ago. And now digital is everywhere. It's everywhere in our lives. It's everywhere in football. And I try to distinguish three different pillars that we will cover today. One is on sponsorship, because digital, when I say digital, you'll see I'm talking about all the new brands that, it's digital, non-digital, but the core is digital. Digital has entered the sponsorship departments and the sponsorship strategies in a very strong way. The second area, the second pillar, is more content and data, which in a way it's been always there, as an objective of digital, but now it has become a strategic pillar and an absolutely boost for the football industry. And then, of course, we have to talk about Web 3.0, because it's something that, especially since last year, it got a lot of buzz, a lot of happenings, and we need to see also where we are in terms of Web 3.0. So let's start with sponsorship. So it's actually good news that in the last years, and especially since the pandemic, where more traditional brands have been suffering, and have been affecting the sponsorship, is actually good news in general. All the eruption of the new brands, because they keep driving the market. We have all these new brands that we'll get into the definition what these brands are, and what the new economy is. But certainly they've been driving the market in the last 2 years, and that's really good news. So we have, of course, the example of the agreement announced between Binance and Cristiano Ronaldo a few months back. That's only one of the examples of the last months. But I always like, and this is a classic in my presentations, I really like to show this, to explain and to showcase how from one tournament to another, and of course we're talking 4 years, and in this case even 5 years, because in 2020 we couldn't have the Euro, how certain brands have erupted that we could not imagine in 2016, right? So if you see the partners in the Euro 2016, you have the usual suspects, right? You have the airline, you have the telecom, the car, the tires, Coca-Cola, the beer, etc., etc. When we look at the next edition of Euro, we start to see, of course, we still have, Coca-Cola, and we have the beer, and we have an airline, but we start to see companies on the digital space that, few years before this Euro 2020, which took place in 2021, you would never imagine they would be a partner at that scale, right? TikTok, for instance, takeaway.com, Booking.com, even Alipay. These are companies that, yes, we were using, before, but it was starting to be used, right? It was, of course, the adoption was coming fast, but you would never imagine Booking.com with UEFA takeaway.com, TikTok, right? So just from one edition to another, you can see the eruption of these brands, and I think it's a very interesting exercise to do to put some perspective on from one tournament to another. But it's just nonstop, right? Because for me, that I think was a very strong statement from a company like Crypto.com. To be a partner of a FIFA World Cup, that's a very strong statement, right? Crypto.com, they've been doing amazing agreements in the last year, 2 years. I mean, some naming rights in the US, phenomenal. Paris Saint-Germain, Serie A, many agreements. But I think nothing can compare to be part of the FIFA World Cup. So to have these new companies getting at that level, I think it's pretty phenomenal. Then we have examples that could be even more surprising. I mean, who wasn't surprised by Atletico de Madrid signing with Whalefin, right? So it's a company that I think 99%, or 95 at least, of the people that we are here tonight, probably we didn't know about this company, right? And all of a sudden, they are in the front of the jersey of Atletico de Madrid, and they are on the sleeve of Chelsea. That's a big statement also from a company that is starting and in some cases doesn't even operate in the local market, right? So we see these new companies, some established like Crypto.com, Binance, even if they're very young, but we know them and we are used to them announcing deals. But then you still have companies erupting and surprising you with very, very strong commitments. And then, of course, I cannot forget this agreement with FC Barcelona and Spotify, because this is the case of a new economy company, a digital company that, of course, has changed the way we consume music. But again, is a very, very strong statement to be on the front of the jersey of FC Barcelona and name the stadium Spotify Camp Nou. I think it's a very interesting. It's different, of course, from the crypto agreements that I just explained. I think it's great for the image of the club, and I think Spotify can really benefit from it. But it's companies that 4 or 5 years ago you would not imagine them at that scale. So, on that sense, good news for the industry that these companies still see sports as the platform for promoting their brands and services. So all comes with pros and cons, right? So the new economy, as we call it in sponsorship, the positive is this eruption of new players, as I said, has been in a way saving the industry and being an amazing opportunity for clubs to get revenue. The good thing about these companies compared to the classic companies is that they can decide fast. They don't have the structures of companies that have been around for decades. They don't have board of directors. They don't have this and that. They can decide very fast. They are very dynamic. Some of them are really in startup mode, so they can decide really, really fast. And many of them, that's also something relevant for this type of companies, have a lot of liquidity, have a lot of cash, because the service they provide being digital, it's a lot of transaction on the digital space. So they might get a lot of liquidity direct through their digital platforms. So that, altogether makes a big opportunity for the industry. What are the cons of this? Well, the fact that they are not been around for decades, it basically means that they don't have a track record. So there's a risk. The companies are not mature enough. Some of them are really solid, have a lot of funding behind, they have a business that is running, but still, we have some of them that they're taking bets on sponsorship in order to grow their business. So that's a bit of a risky decision, because you are spending money in order to grow your market. But if it doesn't work, then you cannot, you might be in trouble paying the sponsorship. And some, you might think today that they're very strong. Will they be around in 1, 2, 3 years? Who knows? It's simply who knows, because it's all a new market. And actually, we've seen in the last months and in the last years, actually, that there's been problems in the industry, because, as I said, some companies build their reputation on sponsorship, build their market and their awareness on sponsorship, but the market is not there yet, and it can really be a backlash. So these are just some examples, and that's not intended to criticize any of the clubs that do that, because I think all the clubs, they want the best for the revenue side of the club, and they want to guarantee that money comes in. But it's true that we've seen more and more cases of companies that at the end cannot fulfill those commitments, because at the end those contracts become liabilities with millions of euros that need to be paid. If the money is not in the bank, then problems start to arise. So we need to be wary that the opportunity also comes with risk. Then let's get into the content and data side of things, and how in football there's been a disruption of the traditional platforms. And I put traditional like this because, again, we're talking companies that some of them are 10, 15, max 20 years old. So again, in the life of a company, that's not comparable to companies that have been around for a century or more. But everything goes so fast on the digital space that let's call those traditional or the classic platforms. How and why there is a need to disrupt this so-called establishment. So social media, I say up until 2020, I mean, still the case today, but I would say that nothing really was done until 2020. What's the positive of social media? Big numbers, of course. The following you get on the Facebook, Instagrams, etc., it's massive because the audience is there, right? It became a popularity show off between football clubs. I have 300 million, I have 200 million, you have 100 million, 150, 350. I reach 100 million on Facebook for the first time, etc., right? So it was a good way to showcase how popular. It was a ranking of popularity. It was very clear to see and to compare how clubs can compete on the popularity side and on the global side, right? Because you could see also the clubs that were really global or are really global through their social media following. So the impact was huge during the last decade, and we were using in the industry, in the clubs, the big numbers as a reference when we were out selling sponsorship. But what's been the problem? That's been a problem identified for years, is that the clubs don't monetize. And that's a very important topic, because the ones making the money are the platforms, are the Facebooks, are the Instagrams, but the club struggles to monetize. The data is owned by the platforms. Even if the fans, of course, the fans are for the clubs. Nobody is a fan of Facebook, but you go on Facebook and then you become a like on FC Barcelona, Real Madrid, whatever your choice is. But the money is made by the platform. The engagement is low because more and more the clubs and everybody is suffering from the algorithms, right? You can say you have 10 million, 100 million, 200 million. How many people see your post? You don't even know. It's very hard to control, and you are absolutely exposed to an algorithm that what they want is to force you to actually spend money in order to promote your content. So that has created low engagement, and at the end, one of the biggest weaknesses of the industry, the data. The data is not known by the club. The clubs say that they have millions of fans and followers, and it's true, but they have very limited data because the social media platforms, they keep the data and they don't share. So the CRM are really dry in terms of contacts, while Facebook and company are having all the data. So this is nothing revolutionary. This is known in the industry for years. The question is clear, how can we solve that? the problem is the answer. There's not really an answer. There starts to be answers, but the clubs and the industry is very much dependent on the platforms. But this is starting to change. The objectives on this part of the strategy in terms of digital regarding content and data is really enlarge and reach new audiences. So how can I reach more people, right? I'm already reaching people in my platforms through my own media, etc. How can I reach more? Who I'm not reaching, how can I reach them? And then, as I said, capture data and monetize. So when we talk about new audiences, I think a good example is TikTok, right? I remember 3 years ago when TikTok and the equivalent or the name they have in China, they were booming in China, and it was difficult to imagine TikTok could work in the Western societies, right? I remember football clubs being really reluctant to get in. Like, how can we get in? How can we cannot do funny content like this. How can we do, 20, 30 seconds videos? Doesn't work for football, right? I mean, now this sounds, of course, ridiculous. Everybody's in TikTok. They're doing funny content. The players are doing funny content. They're dancing in order to engage with their fans, because there's some people that if you are not in TikTok, you will not reach them. And this is one of the main concerns of the football industry is how do you reach the youth? The youth, I mean, Facebook, they are ignoring Facebook, they're starting to ignore Instagram. Now they are in TikTok. It's the opportunity to get to them. But their content, the way they want it is completely different from, from me, for instance, right? Even if I can have a lot of fun watching TikTok. So the clubs have been adapting to the new audiences. They go where the audience is, right? So that's good for the audience. Still doesn't solve the data issue. Another interesting example on that sense is Twitch. Twitch is having more and more presence from football clubs. Actually, during a football game, they might cover the game, like PSG example here on Twitch. The press conference, many of them they show it on Twitch. They comment it on Twitch. It's more informal. It's where again the youth are used to go to Twitch and find a way to approach the content about their club and everything in a more informal way. The youth doesn't like the classic journalists around the table and making statements and in a very formal way. They like fun. They like something more visual. You can see here you have on the screen you have the map of the field. You have the stats. You have the guys commenting, young guys commenting, on T-shirt. So that's what they want to see, and this is what's happening more and more. So the clubs are more and more present on Twitch with the same logic of TikTok. They go where the new audiences are. Esports, it's been said, especially since the pandemic, about the boom of esports, and esports certainly is growing and is very relevant. But when we talk about the football industry, what happened is that the football clubs, they put in the past and even now a couple of guys playing FIFA, and that's it. They tick the box, we've done esports. But the thing is that esports with football, it's very small football in the ecosystem of esports, and that's why I think it's interesting this move from FC Barcelona creating a team at League of Legends, right? Because if you see what are the 15 top games in esports, I mean, FIFA or eFootball Pro from Konami, they are nowhere to be seen. I mean, you would really need to go down in that list to find those games. And what clubs are struggling is to find their place because they think that doing football is their natural thing. So they do FIFA or the eFootball Pro. That's the easy part, and I understand it. It's fine, but it's not doing really esports. Esports would be to have a team on League of Legends like FC Barcelona does, and some other clubs are daring to get into some, Counter-Strike, Dota 2 Schalke here in the image is a good example of that, because then you're really getting into the esports audience. Because otherwise, what clubs need to understand that is that esports is a different audience. They're not waiting for the football clubs to get in, with open arms. They don't care. They don't care, So if you're relevant for the community and you come with competing with the games that are relevant for the community, great. But if you think that because you're FC Barcelona or you are Paris Saint-Germain, you're going to get a big following by playing FIFA or eFootball Pro, it's the wrong approach. So what I'm seeing is a bit of a slowdown on the esports side because they're realizing all these limitations and that the return is not that important. So still they play FIFA, still they play eFootball Pro depending on the sponsor they have, but I don't see a lot of strength on the esports side regarding football clubs. An interesting trend we've seen in the last 2 years, though, and here I see a big bet on football clubs and leagues, is on the OTT, because it's natural. Leagues and clubs, they have a lot of content. They have a lot of content in-house, The part, especially a club, that club cannot have is the live broadcasting, of course. That's sold separately to, through the leagues or through UEFA. That's a different business. They get their share of revenue. Great. But what about all the content they have? Not only the daily content that is happening in the club, but the historical content, So at the end, what's happening is why should you give this to a third party? Again, I come back to the same example as the Facebook and Instagrams. Why should you give this to a third party to exploit those when the technology is there for you to run your own OTT and create your channel? And what is the objective of this? The objective of this at the end is that people sign up, getting data from the people, right? So if you are a Barca fan and you want to get access to the OTT of Barca, what you will see, you will need to register. It will be part of their online membership, Culés. So you are part of the database, right? And then you can enjoy for free. One of the things at some point is like, okay, how do we monetize OTT? Will people pay for the content? It's very complex. It's a very complex element. People, we don't like to pay, or we pay very little. However, by opening the gallery of, historical games, historical players, special reports, etc., the fan might be very intrigued and interested to join that, to engage, and to share the data. And that's very valuable. So we're seeing a lot of this, Also, LaLiga, I think it's very interesting because LaLiga, they have the rights for their games. So in some countries where as they call it, it's a black market, which it's in black because there's no in dark, sorry, because it's not broadcasted. Before, leagues were giving away the rights to Facebook Live or whatever, right? Why should you do that? You have a dark market where you don't have a broadcasting deal. Do it in your own platform. Then you control the data and you control the monetization. So I think OTTs are a very important and relevant element that we'll see more and more because of this data capturing, this real engagement. It's a direct to consumer or direct to fan, as some people like to call it, which is very, very relevant. You're giving the fan what they want, which is content about the club they love. And this is about fun. It's fun engagement. It's its own solutions in-house for you to capture this data. The only way you will get this data is if you as a club or you as a league have a product that is attractive for the fan will sign up and then they will benefit and we are happy to share data if we're giving something in return. But that we are always very reluctant at the beginning to give any data. We all do that as consumers, but you need to the consumer, to your fan, to give something they appreciate and they like, right? Two examples here, the app of the clubs, of course, that's been around for years. Many cases they need to be redone, because they didn't solve all the problems. It can be a solution for ticketing, it can be a solution for merchandising and so on, but more content can be put in there. Again, if you give value to the fan will love to have the app. If they find the same content in Facebook where they go every day, what's their incentive to go to the app? So they need to have really valuable product. And then on the right, for instance, those are other solutions that exist in the market, and actually I cooperate with this company called Tally. It's an American company, and they create a white label prediction game. So fans can have fun predicting the results, predicting who's going to score, competing with each other, and they share the data with the clubs, right? So this is really the type of fan engagement that is relevant for clubs and leagues, and this is where the industry is going, because I can guarantee you that one of the weakest points of the industry is the lack of fan data by the clubs and the leagues. This is something that if you guys want to work in sports, or you have projects on sport and so on, really it's less visible because people like to talk more about NFTs and so on, but fan data is really the weakest link in the business. But we need to talk about Web 3.0, of course. That remains relevant. And I call it a bit about after the initial boom, because I remember last year we were talking about NFTs and about how it was exploding, about the Dapper NBA deal and what was happening in the industry, and everything seemed to be a success, and it was like the holy grail, the NFTs. And I think, as it happens with any business and any market, there's a moment that there is a boom, but then things stabilize. So I'm not pessimistic about it. On the contrary, NFTs are here to stay, and what Web 3.0 can provide, it will be in our lives from now on forever, not only in football. But it's true that we went through an initial boom, and I remember, and I would like to see this updated at the end of the year, that Deloitte in December last year predicted that the NFT trade will exceed $2 billion in sports only, right? So, of course, many things happened in the last 8 months. We had the crypto crash. Some things are adjusted. And again, I'm not saying NFTs are dead. On the contrary, what I'm saying is that this initial boom of where anything could be an NFT and everybody will go crazy to acquire them, it's not the reality. In the same way that, for the people that are old like me, they can remember, even if I was young then, how the internet, everything was .com in the early 2000s, and was everything had to be online, and was the boom of the .com. Many projects disappear, but the internet is fundamental in our lives. So I think what's happening in this time, this decade, is exactly this. We are adjusting, we are understanding how it works. There have been many projects that cannot survive because they didn't have the essence and the core to survive, but this is going to be here to stay, and there's a lot of value into this. And as an example, again, and Diego knows that I use a lot of FC Barcelona examples because I naturally follow it a lot. But one of the things we've seen is that when there were many NFT projects, if you paid a bit of attention in football, the big football clubs were having more a wait and see strategy, right? You didn't see them running towards the NFT race because they knew they had big value, and that they needed to find the right partners or the right moments and the right products in order to launch their NFTs, right? So we saw just a few weeks ago the first NFT masterpiece by FC Barcelona. By doing it like this, you give certain uniqueness to the offering. It's a one piece. It was auctioned. It was during the summer tour, so it was all surrounded by all of this to make it unique. And they got it at $693,000, right? So I'm very curious to see what's next. I'm very glad to see FC Barcelona getting into the NFT space. They have Barca Studios that can take care of this, but I think the big clubs make a smart move, not rushing, right? They need to value what they have and not rush too much into this race in which, again, there are risks, as we saw before with sponsorship. There are also risks. And actually, talk about big clubs, on the other side of the coin, we had a bad experience by Liverpool, and Liverpool clearly it's a top 10 club, right? So this, again, it's not to criticize the club. I think it's just about learning about the things that didn't work. But they had this Heroes Club launch a few months ago, and it was not a success, right? It was not a success. The reasons can be multiple, but basically, I think that we need to get out of this logic in which we think that any NFT from a big brand or big club or big league will sell out in hours and it's going to be millions. The market has a limit, right? And by talking to people in the industry, many relevant people, what they told me is that in 2021, because it was the launch, you had a lot of movements. It was the start of this, so you had a lot of movement, a lot of crypto native crypto trading people, that they were active. There was a lot of movement, but then comes a bit of the maturity. It starts to stabilize, and at this moment, you cannot have the same people purchasing all the time. You need to have new people coming in, and then these new people, it takes a bit more time, for certain people that are not used to crypto, they're not used to exchanges, they're not used to tokens, etc. I think that it's a learning, right? Things can be a boom. It's not always going to be a boom. That's why it's called a boom, right? So again, we need to learn from the experiences and take the right moment, the right product, so on. But certainly NFTs are here to stay, and it will continue to grow. And in fact, what the commercial directors and chief revenue officers are finding in the industry is a very complex ecosystem, right? Because all of this, this light, I would say 2 years ago, three, it almost didn't exist, as a reality. I mean, in a football club, because you had the fan tokens. The fan tokens it's different from NFT, even if it's based again on the same Web3 blockchain technology, but it's different, right? You are kind of owning. It's not real ownership, but it's providing you an ownership on a fan token from your favorite club. In this case, it provides you with marketing benefits through socials.com, for instance. Bitsy not anymore, because that's one of the examples that didn't go well. But then next to that, you have the NFTs. So can you have fan tokens and NFTs? The answer is yes. And actually, you can have different type of NFTs. And as we're going to see now in an example, you have the crypto partners, crypto sponsors, that they can do NFTs and they can do fan tokens, because at the end, it's all the same technology on the blockchain. Then you have the data-driven companies that help the clubs to gather more data. Then you have the gaming, which is gaming, esports, sponsorship playing a role. And then you have new platforms like Twitch or TikTok. So all this ecosystem, which is growing and growing in terms of brands, it's what is really creating a puzzle that is more and more difficult to put together on the best possible way, because some clubs might be doing an agreement today that might limit them tomorrow. So as this is happening before our eyes, in all honesty, we're still learning on what's the best way to maximize that. But one of the good examples I always like to talk about is LaLiga, and that, because that answers a lot of questions like, can you have fan tokens and NFTs? Yes, LaLiga has an agreement with socios.com and has NFT partners. But then the beauty of the NFT is that actually, you can select and cut the pie in order to provide the NFT piece to the right partner. So Sorare, which is one of the good news, actually one of the good companies that are getting a lot of traction and are doing things very well here in France. They do the collectible cards. So they had a smart approach in first doing leaks, because of course the leaks give them a lot of players and clubs. Now they're also focusing on clubs because then they get more rights. They do Legends edition, so it's very interesting. It's the equivalent, let's say, of the Panini card that we all understand the value of the physical Panini card. This is the equivalent on digital. But then we had the eruption of Dapper. Dapper Labs. It started with the NBA 1 year and a half ago with highlights, right? You can have collectible highlights. That was a big boom on year one. Again, all of this year one, it's a big boom because people want to get the first editions and so on. It's more difficult to sustain it. But that's the challenge for these companies. But people like LaLiga, they know how to maximize. And then if tomorrow LaLiga wants to launch their NFT that doesn't conflict with collectible cards or highlights, they can do it. It's an endless product actually, because NFT, what it means is that it's a digital collectible. So basically you can, in the same way that on the physical world you can have your collectibles, so can you on the digital. And I just want to go through some of the latest movements I've seen that I think are interesting on that direction. I mean, we see, talking about Socios, that it's not only about sponsorship or partnerships. Now we saw Socios buying 24.5% stake in Barca Studios. That's a strategic move. That's really an injection of liquidity to the club in order to also boost and enhance the Web3 strategy that they will have now with a strategic partner. I think very smart move. I'm very intrigued by what this can bring for both parties. Another movement that we saw that I find quite fascinating is to see how EA Sports becomes the naming partner of La Liga from next season, right? So it's not going to be anymore La Liga Santander. It's going to be La Liga EA Sports FC, right? So amazing and very bold move from EA, and I'm going to touch on gaming in a couple of slides. And then another interesting movement that I've seen in the last months is the FIFA Plus launch. And actually now, and of course it's the year of the World Cup, so it's perfect timing. If you go to FIFA.com, where before you would have a lot of, classic federation website information here, results, etc., it's a content platform. They push the videos on you, etc. So I think it's a very, very interesting move from FIFA. So that's from the past, the bad news from the past, but that doesn't apply anymore. So what's coming? That's the relevant part. So I just wanted to put. I'm not playing to be to predict the future. That's impossible. But I like to pinpoint some of the elements I see that they are coming, and in my conversations or in my projects, I see that they can play a bigger role in the disruption that we're seeing in football. Gaming is one of them. I think gaming for years was really, it was a sponsorship deal with FIFA or Konami, and some licenses in the digital gaming, and that was it. But more and more, it's going to be, and it is now, another engagement platform. The same way that you have digital, it's for to engage with your fans. Gaming is going to be more and more present to engage with fans, and it's going to be part of content. It's going to be part of the entertainment and some interesting moves. We have a new game coming. We've been talking about eFootball Pro and FIFA, EA Sports FC for next year. There's going to be a new player coming in next year, and they already signed Cristiano Ronaldo as an ambassador, amongst others. And the look of the game, it's really great. They have a different approach, more focused on community. It's going to be very interesting to see how they find their space, right? But it's good to have some disruption on this FIFA, Konami historical clash. The EA Sports, other element that of course made the news was, it's not going to be the FIFA game anymore. So, we've seen already EA Sports FC, what they want to do. They want to call it EA Sports FC, and they're going to be very strong on partnerships like La Liga. But what is FIFA going to do? That's what what we want to see, right? So it's a risky move also for them, but for sure they want to have plans on gaming. And I think another one that I was following because it's interesting to see DAZN. DAZN you cannot see it as a pure broadcaster, right? I mean, DAZN is launching DAZN Bet. The CEO is talking about betting, about gaming, about e-commerce. He's talking about entertainment, right? There's no anymore one thing that it fits all. Like, you know, I'm a broadcaster, I'm a digital platform, so on. Everything is merging into entertainment. I want to make a mention about women's football. I'm a believer that this is a very interesting proposition today in football. It's not linked to all the digital that we said, but I still want to talk about it because I think that the growth we have seen is phenomenal in the last years. We've seen, you know, records in Camp Nou, records in Wembley, you know, more and more attention, and I think it's unstoppable. And I think that the timing is right for brands to step in because there are very special opportunities, and it's probably the most cost-effective sponsorship you can find. And it's absurd to compare it to what men's football is because that's the biggest sport in earth. I think it needs to be seen as a, you know, a unique and standalone proposition in which the growth is unstoppable and the values and the messaging is extremely positive towards the society and the community. So I think I want to really pinpoint that this is an amazing movement that we're seeing in the football industry. And of course, the metaverse, you know, I mean, that's the last element on what's coming, you know. Again, the technology is there. I mean, I'm an advisor of this company, some Metasport Arena, that we're launching now. This technology is there. But I think what the football industry is trying to understand how this links to everything that we said before, right? The technology is coming, you know, at some point we will be able to enjoy a game, you know, through our home or through the glasses, like as we were in the stadium, you know, watching it with our friends from other they live the other side of town or of the world. So this is happening, but I think we're gonna need to wait a few years to actually see really tangible elements. But we're gonna see very interesting movements in the coming months already, in which, you know, in these new projects, clubs will start to be part of it because they want to understand how they can leverage their power on the metaverse. So takeaways, and that's my last slide. So the digital space is extremely dynamic, and the changes, there can be some good, but also the bad, are accelerated. It goes very fast, you know. 6 months ago, this presentation would be a bit different. In 6 months, it's going to be still different because things are happening. So there are many new elements in the new pandemic world that we're living, you know. Some of them are getting, you know, a bit of stabilization after the initial boom, and some of them are just disappearing. So it's normal curve of any market, you know. So it's interesting to see that 2 years down the road, we are already starting to see elements like this. But the common line, that's something that needs to be present in all the projects, elements, etc. Is around content, is about data, entertainment, and monetization. You know, it's really important. This is where everything is going. If you look back at the presentation, everything is going to that direction, in which football, it goes beyond the sport. It's a 24/7 entertainment proposition, you know. And I always like to remember the words of Didagli, the vice president or the board member of FC Barcelona during many years, and when I was in the club, which, you know, is of course known for his innovation ideas. And when Barca launched their OTT, he said clearly that football clubs like FC Barcelona, they need to see how they compete with Disney, not only how they compete with Real Madrid and Manchester United, you know. So I think it's a very interesting thought to remember, you know. And just the last point is, before this read that, you know, we're going through a revolution. And I think that when it's so sustained in time, I think we need to talk about a transformation. It's really a transformation. Nothing is going to be like it was before, but it's not something that it happens in 2 months. It's something that's going to be taking years, but we are seeing happening before our eyes. And that's it for me. Diego, over to you.
Thank you, Juli. Thank you very much for the presentation. Very insightful to hear what you have to share with us, because I think for a lot of us, we hear a lot about these topics, but you've really made us understand them a little bit more as to where we're at and where we potentially could go with the trends that you've outlined tonight. I completely agree with what you're saying, that there's this transformation, there's this disruption, and we've seen it. The pandemic, of course, was a trigger, but perhaps this would have arrived regardless. Maybe it accelerated the arrival of a lot of these trends. And I think for our audience, it's important as well to understand this a little bit deeper, because this is where the industry is headed. And especially for those that are looking to get into this industry, these are the trends, these are the elements that are shaping the future of the football industry and the sports industry as a whole. So in order to understand them, in order to grasp the concepts, people that are looking to get into this field are going to have more of an insightful, view on the topics you've shared with us tonight. I'll pick up on the presenter's role on my end, Julie, because I have a couple slides here that I'll be sharing. So first off, I just want to share this. I can move the slide here. Have a look. There we go. The slide here on questions, because what we'd like is for you guys to type in your questions in the chat box. We're going to try to get to as many as we can. We have about 10-15 minutes remaining for some questions, so we'll try to get to some of those. So start typing in the chat box. We'll select a few of them. In the meantime, as you begin thinking and putting your questions, I did want to talk about our Master in Football Business and Management, which begins in October. And the reason I want to talk about it is because if you're interested in understanding the current landscape in the football industry from a business perspective, this course potentially might be what could add value to you. It's an 8-month program. It starts in October. It has live classes such as the one that you've just heard from Julie tonight, which is very up to date, very relevant. And like I said at the outset, at the end of these classes in the master's program, we have open mics and people ask questions, and it's an open discussion. Obviously tonight we're going to be reading the questions through the chat, so it's a little bit less interactive, but just to give you a taste of what the classes are like. And very briefly, for those that are listening tonight and want to get into the industry, we've identified at SBI 4 pillars, 4 elements that are essential for you to have success in the industry. And obviously the first one is knowledge, right? You need to be up to date, you need to have an understanding, and we've seen this tonight with what Julie has shared with us. If you want to get into this industry, you need to understand how it works, and you need to make sure that you're up to date, you're relevant, and you're adding value to the market with the knowledge and the skills that are required in the industry today. Obviously, network. It's important to build connections, to build relationships, and when you're part of a community, you become, a member of an association that allows you to grow and build meaningful connections, relationships. And of course, in our master program, we do this very much with the speakers and also the peers that take part in the course. One of the other elements that is very unique and we very much enjoy in our master's program is the mentorship program. And what we do is we understand where you're at today and where you want to be, right? So we do a gap analysis, and we do individual sessions, we do group sessions where we talk about your career aspirations and your plans for the future. But not only that, we do some introspection to make sure that we add value to you and say, well, based on your profile, based on your strengths, based on your aspirations, this is the roadmap that we suggest you take. These are the tips that we give you from our standpoint, based on our experience and what we know about the football industry, where it's at and where it's going. So this is something very interesting about the master, because not only do you learn about the market, the trends, and everything that's happening in the industry, but you also work on yourself. You work on your own gaps, and you're in a position to really leverage that. And Julie was talking about transformation in the industry. Well, this program really transforms you, because you understand who you are, what you want to do, what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you like, what you don't like. And after that, you come out with a roadmap that aligns you to where you want to be and accelerates your path. And then finally, the other element is, of course, practical experience. We have lots of relationships with clubs, federations, as I mentioned before. And the objective is for you to have that connection, for you to have that experience. Many times we get projects commissioned by these clubs, by these organizations, and our students work on those projects and then present them to the clubs or the federations or the leagues or the sports companies. And then in some instances as well, we provide internships where you go in and you work in one of these clubs or these organizations in sports. So obviously understanding that experience is a big part of the whole element. And then finally, not really a pillar, but something that more and more people need and want today is flexible learning. Something that you can do in parallel with your other commitments, whether they're professional or academic or even personal. This method of learning allows you to connect once, twice a week, do the live session, participate in the interactions and the discussions, and then you go off and do some self-study on your own whenever you have some free time. So this is what the Masters is all about. We've worked with a lot of people in the industry, and I don't want to go into much detail about the Masters because we'll have due time for those that are interested to contact us and we'll have conversations. But if you want more information, go to our website, sbibarcelona.com. That's sbibarcelona.com for Sports Business Institute. Check it out, see the program, have a look. If you have any questions, get in touch with us. That said, let's go back to what we talked about, and particularly the subject at hand, and look at some of the questions that have come up in the chat box. So Julie, I'm not sure if you've seen some of them come up, but if you see any interesting ones that you see, please feel free to let me know. Otherwise, I'll also have a look. There's a lot that are coming in, so I'm going to try and get to some of them. But
yeah, no, I've been reading and I can go through them if you want.
Sure,
Diego. I mean, Mario is saying that one of the biggest challenges is the significant knowledge gap within the clubs and sports organizations in terms of technology, and absolutely. I mean, the knowledge, there is a lack of knowledge. It's the clubs and the sports entities, they've been in a way caught not on surprise, but they're not prepared. It's been so fast that they don't have the skills. And actually, I think that's an opportunity for the people listening to our session, that the industry needs young people that are understanding all of this, because there are some skills that you need experience and you need years, and that's why being young this can go against you. But in all these topics that we covered today, if you're young, smart, and understand it, you are needed in this industry. So yeah, there's a knowledge gap. I think Richard Carabell says about the Man City content ownership and so on. I think yes. I think that what the fans want to see always is what happens behind the scenes, and that's why all these programs on Netflix, they've been so successful. I think they're getting a bit repetitive, but if you're a fan, it's great. But if you're not a fan, sometimes it's not that interesting, apart from some cases. But yes, I think that this is the type of content that you need to put in your app on your OTT. Sorry if I don't pronounce well. Lakshya Vai says talks about the innovation labs. I love that. Actually, I do love that. I lived the birth, the arrival, the creation of the Barcelona Innovation Hub when I was in the club. I didn't have a clue what it was. I understood it firsthand. I cooperated with it. We had a couple of sponsors participating, and that I think it's great. I think that's a very interesting trend that needs to be taken seriously by the clubs, because otherwise it's useless. But I think the fact that you can engage with startups that can benefit your club, but also through these programs you can have ownership, or you can have a business interest to develop them. I think it's great. And actually, I think what LaLiga is doing with LaLiga Tech is extremely visionary. So Carlos Esposito talks about the change of messaging inside the NFT companies, avoiding the word NFT. I'm not that aware of that, to be honest, but I think what's happening is that NFT, in some cases, is having also some negative connotations because of, it's becoming a buzzword, and many people don't understand what NFT stands for. well, digital collectible is more understandable. Again, what I said before about opening into the new market, right? Not the people that are crypto native, but going to the mass. NFT is a very complex concept. Digital collectible, everybody can understand, so it could make sense to me. How can clubs and federations benefit and learn from the blockchain technology knowledge behind these partnerships? Well, that's the thing that, sometimes if it's a pure sponsorship, they don't benefit beyond the money. So I think that's why I think the Barca Studios and Socios partnership or acquisition, let's say, part acquisition can be very interesting, because what you need is strategic partners, not sponsors, in order to benefit. The football industry in Africa, Tebo, well, it's true that the examples are for the European industry, because of course European football is the reference, so these are the examples that have been used. I think that in Africa it will be coming, many of them, but as it happens with some American sports where the US is the reference, I think in football Europe is the reference. So I think that what I'm hoping is that some of these examples might inspire you or others in Africa to develop some of these activities. But I think that because it's a very young population in Africa, and football is huge in terms of following. I think the countries that where the digital, let's say, penetration is very, very high, which I know in some cases can be also the speed can be a problem, but I think that they can benefit a lot from some of these trends. Adam is asking, the balance between commercialization and maintaining the integrity and essence of the clubs. Well, that's a difficult one. I think that football belongs to the fans, clubs belong to the fans, but the reality, and that's a very difficult balance, is that before the clubs were caring about the 50,000 ticket holders or members, right, or 80,000 or 100,000 in case of Barcelona. Now the reality is that they need to care about this community because they're the local community, but the monetization and the growth of the club will be done by the millions that are outside your city and in your country, and that they will never set foot in your stadium. And that's a very difficult challenge, to keep the essence. And the most romantics and nostalgic will say that football is losing its essence. And I think, this transformation, I think the essence, it's going to stay there, but many things will not be the same anymore, as they are not anyway. So it's a difficult challenge. So Yogeshwaran, sorry if I don't pronounce well, you're interested in football, and well, not only the financial aspects, because if you're like sponsorships and customer data is also commercial, I think that if you want to pursue a career, I think that, as Diego said, for, education and what SBI Barcelona can offer, you need to get the education you need to get. I don't know if you have it, that's why I'm saying it, but if you don't, I think an online master's is a great solution for you, because then it can open the doors to internships and then grow in that industry. So I think that if you don't have yet the let's say this, I think you should really consider doing the master's.
Actually, Yogesh is applied and has been accepted, so we're looking forward to welcoming
Nice.
him in the Masters. So nice to see you connected, Yogesh, and look forward to seeing you in October. And you'll be speaking to Juli a little bit further on as well in the course.
Looking forward to that. Excellent. So there's another from Quinter in terms of Africa. I think I covered it. There's some countries where there is a lot of passion, but they're really behind on digital. I can think of Morocco and the passion of Casablanca. I can think of Egypt. What Al Ahly can represents in the continent. where they're quite advanced also. I'm thinking about South Africa, but I'm thinking about other I think that the challenge is how to transform this passion into digital, tangible solutions platforms. Even if it's not about monetization at the beginning, but it's about engaging and bringing the people together. I think it needs to start with these leading clubs. It happens everywhere. I talk about Europe because this is where the leading clubs are, and even within Europe, you need to see what Barcelona, Real Madrid, Manchester United, etc., are doing. And in Africa, you need some leaders also on that that lead the way, and potentially that the CAN, the African Cup of Nations, that also can play that role of leadership in order to inspire the rest. But I think you need any excuse me, any industry, any market needs leaders that push forward, and I think in Africa that's what needs to happen. Samuel Fox, Refugee Football Network. There's a question for you, Diego. For my side, I think that yes, I think that it's. I mean, I would need to know more about the project, but I think in the current times there could be sponsors, there could be things that can be done on this platform, because it's unfortunately very much happening these days, and it's very much in the minds of people. I mean, as you've seen, FC Barcelona has changed UNICEF for ACNUR, to reflect that, and I think there could be interesting points there. Diego, the question for you is: there is an opportunity to build a program to help educate refugees.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And in fact, we're always looking to do more in places where we know that opportunities are less available. So I would suggest that if you have anything that you have in mind that you'd like to, talk about or discuss or propose, to send us an email. We'll leave the contact details at the end, and perhaps we can have a conversation, or we can start with that. I know also Mario Leo, the CEO of Result Sports, was here tonight, and I think he still is. And he does a lot of work, particularly in Africa, which of course I'm not talking about just a particular continent here. We know that the refugee, aspect is global, but Mario works very closely with Africa. So just to mention, this is the type of environment that creates connections, networking, and relationships. So I encourage you to check out what they do at Result Sports, because, like I said, they have a very specific program in some countries that have less opportunities, and especially in the African continent. So that said, there's a few more from Daniel and a couple others, Julie, so I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. So Daniel asking about what's the future of TV broadcasting, referring to the traditional TV versus the streaming. I think that clearly we see more and more presence from the new players, right? I mean, we've seen that Amazon is playing a role. We see Apple playing a role also. They acquired the rights for the MLS recently, and we're gonna see more and more. I think one of the difference I see is that they don't have the crazy approach of pumping money as the others did in the past, because I think these companies, they're more diversified. They are Amazon, of course, their business is another one. This is kind of a new line for them. Same with Apple. So they're already rich companies that they are now getting into this space. Whereas for a broadcaster, which they only do broadcast, it was key for them to pay whatever they had to in order to acquire the rights, which was scaling up the fees year after year, or edition after edition. You were talking World Cups, etc. I think the streaming companies, or the new players, they have more the capacity, or the luxury even in a way, to not having to bet crazy money in order to get it. But I think more and more those are the ones that will be dominating the market, and they will be more and more present. But they have a different and very business driven approach. So yeah,
Several more, Julie, but I know that in the interest of time, probably we'll need to maybe select 2 or 3 more. So if
yeah,
that
the rest are more comments, to be honest.
rest are more comments, there's a couple others that I saw at the end that are interesting, and maybe we can cover and finish off with those.
I can take the last two if you want.
There's a question from Michelle that was up earlier, so thank you for reposting, Michelle. So we can maybe take Michelle's question and finish off with Diego Salas and wrap it up there if
Sounds good. Okay, Michelle.
so she's
Okay,
talking about
the
the
rise
rise
of
of women's football. And she says that coupled with increased popularity of gaming among girls and women, she's asking if you think it's feasible to leverage this in terms of sponsorship by doing some collaborations with female athletes and gamers.
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing though that is clear is that the demographics of gaming, even if of course all demographics evolve, it's still very, very male dominated, right? So I think if you, my opinion is that what we should see more and more, actually, we've seen because for the first time, FIFA will feature a female player in the cover, and that's very good news. So I think we need to see more of those, more natural integration into the football gaming. For instance, that will be a start. That will be really, really. I think it's very symbolic what FIFA is doing in this next cover. So I think the answer to your question is yes, more can be done because nothing is done. So that's for sure. But I would focus on consolidating and making really grow women's football and see how naturally, in the same way that the male players are featured in games or they have certain presence in the gaming, how female players can be more and more into that, right? We're seeing more in general in sponsorships, and we saw in Spain how Alexia is, featured with many sponsors since last year's Ballon d'Or, which is great. But I think in the gaming community, we need to see more and more presence of the players also in the natural football games at the very least to start with. I think I'm very into starting, step by step, but in the right direction. And I think that would be a good start, like FIFA is doing with the female player care. And Diego, how sponsorship would be affected for FIFA? Honestly, I mean, the question is how sponsorships could be affected for FIFA and soccer federations in future tournaments, given that there will be some issues for partners to activate and fulfill their assets in Qatar, Budweiser as an example. Well, honestly, I don't think there's going to be much. I don't think it's going to be much impact on future events for sure not. I think that it's true that we're going to see some issues, and Budweiser, of course, is a natural one, but this was known before, and some elements and even some boycotts and so on. But I think the World Cup is so big, and the next edition, I think it's so exciting being in North America that, we're going to go through Qatar. People will see it, will watch it, will enjoy it from the TV. Maybe it's going to have less local, let's say, impact with fans and sponsors, as other World Cups. But I think in terms of numbers, digital viewership, etc., it's going to work because the World Cup is massive. And as I said, the next edition being in North America, from January, we're going to talk about 2026, and the World Cup will still be the biggest event in Earth. So I think I don't see many clear and tangible impact. I might be wrong, but it's my opinion.
Excellent. That's a great question to finish off with. So thank you, Diego Tocayo. Right, so we move on now to the conclusion of our webinar, and we'd like to leave you with our contact details here so that you can get in touch with us if you want to know more. This is our email. We do have a business WhatsApp, which is moderated by the team, and you have the number there. So if you want to jot that down and send us a WhatsApp message, sometimes it's more agile if you prefer that instead of email. And of course, our website, sbibarcelona.com. Finally, I'd like to thank all of you who connected here tonight. I mean, there's a lot of questions and comments that came up at the end that talked about whether this seminar or webinar was going to be recorded. Yes, it is being recorded as we speak, so it'll be uploaded to our YouTube channel, and you will also receive it through our newsletter, so stay tuned for that if you missed part of it or you want to review it once again. I know people were talking about trying to get the information again, so yes, it'll be recorded. You can watch it again and take a few more notes if you didn't get the chance a little bit earlier today. There was questions about the African Super League. Quinter also saying about thanking us for taking the time to do this webinar. Well, Quinter, it's us who have to thank you and the rest of the people that have dedicated your time to come in and listen to us, particularly to Juli tonight, because that's what we're all about, adding value to you guys, to our community, and that's why we run these programs, because we believe that in order to make this industry grow, we need to share information, we need to be in a collaborative environment, and that's what we believe at SBI. We don't just believe in doing our programs and having you do the master's courses or short programs with us. We do want to offer this type of training, and like I said before, this is a master class very similar to what Juli presents in our actual master's program. So here you had a taste of it for about an hour 20 minutes, and hopefully you had some great value out of that. Of course, we wouldn't want to finish off without thanking our speaker, Juli. Juli, always a pleasure. We are so proud and delighted to have you as part of the SBI family and collaborating with our master's program and these types of webinars. So thanks again for being here tonight and for sharing your insights and your knowledge.
No, thank you. Thank you and everybody that joined in a summer night like.
Exactly. Well, there you are. Thank you once again. Here's a picture of 3 partners that we have at SBI. And if you're interested to learn more about what we do, get in touch with us. We'd like to know what your aspirations are, what you'd like to do in the industry. Perhaps you're already working in the industry. Perhaps you want to get into the industry. Either way, get in touch with us. We might be able to help you out. And if we can, we'll be delighted to do so. So thanks, everybody. Thank you, Juli. We'll be in touch. All the best. Have a great night.
Thank you.